Did any one of you ever play video games? Right, okay, 7%. Okay, what is gonna be worse, to be honest? I personally think that video games nowadays are not getting enough recognition as they deserve to. And there's a lot of benefits that people playing those games can benefit from. When I was roughly 7 years old, my father brought home Atari 800 XL. Back then it was a very powerful machine, but barely could run any sophisticated, good graphically visual video games such as you can play nowadays. So I played a lot of text adventure games, and those kind of games really helped me to boost my imagination. What was interesting about the Atari is that to load a video game back then, you have a video game stored on the cassette, and you have to spend around 30 to 40, or sometimes even 1 hour, just to start playing one of your favorite games. And I think this really taught me to become a very patient and determined person to reach the goal. And another interesting point was that when you stop playing the game and you switch on your computer, you couldn't save it. You couldn't save your progress. So you have to do everything from the beginning. As the time goes by and the hardware becomes better, it enables developers to use the benefits of better hardware. And they were able to create more sophisticated graphic. And each object in an environment contains polygons. So each object is a basically simple mesh which contains polygons. And think of polygon as something as atom is in physics, the smallest element. However, it's not true anymore because we know that atoms are built from quarks and other smaller particles. So a couple of years later, I received PlayStation. And I started playing RPG games, role-playing games. And those kind of games helped me to simply understand the definition and the difference between good and evil. Because in those kind of games, depends on your action in the game. You either was rewarded or punished. And I think as a young boy, it really helped me to understand quite quickly. Another type of games, adventure games, helped me to boost my creativity, imagination, and also inspired me to read fantasy adventure books. And some of you might know, and some of you might have kids, you know how difficult it is sometimes to persuade them to read anything. Another benefit from playing video games was an opportunity to learn foreign language. Because most of the games I played were either a German-based language or English. So it forces me to basically understand the plot. It forces me to spend a lot of time in dictionary along playing those games. Now I also spend a lot of time playing mindless, stupid games, as some of you might think, first-person shooter games. But is that really the case, that those games are really time wasters and such as stupid as most of us might think? Well, the bad news is that last year in the University of Montreal, one of the professors made a small research, and he got 100 volunteers, non-video game players, to play 40 hours, and he was recording the gray matter in the brain. And what he found out is that the gray matter in the brain was shrinking during playing those games. Now, in some extreme cases, the gray matter shrinkage is responsible for a disease like Alzheimer, dementia, and short-term memory loss. But please do not freak out, as those research were not welcomed by optimists from other neuroscientists, and they didn't have a long-term good research base. Another benefit that other different researchers performed were the cases where eyesight improved. And this is a common myth that everyone thinks that playing those fast-paced shooter games will basically destroy my eyesight. Well, there was an experiment, and for 50 hours, players played Call of Duty. And the test was performed before the game and after the game, after the 50 hours period. And the results afterwards were better than previous in 100% of the gamers. Another such games that are currently very popular are MMORPGs, the multiplayer online role-play games. And they involved a lot of players from a different part of the world to collaborate together, to work together to reach a common goal, to finish a quest that will allow them to gain some experience for the characters, to find the new objects in the game, to fight bigger dragons and stuff like that. The benefits of that is that those people have to communicate together. And as we know, communication is a very, very good skill to have. Another thing that I can benefit from is learning the culture from the different countries while playing those games. Now, this is a video game engine. And when I was around 15 years old or 16 years old, I really tried to build my first game. But I couldn't really find anything out of the box that I can just start playing around and have something that I can play with. The thing that I discovered back then was OpenGL, which was a library that speaks directly to a graphic card. And back then it was super difficult to even get a simple triangle on the screen. Simple polygon, as I mentioned before. And then I just realized it will probably take me over 100 years to just make a simple game. So I gave up, but a few years later I discovered Unity video game engine. And game engine is simply saying environment that enables you to import all the objects that you've created in some 3D applications where you created the 3D models. You can add scripts to them. You can interact between the objects. You can animate them. You can create skyboxes, terrain, and at the end of the day, you can export the game into portable devices, PC, Mac, consoles, and so on. So I really started enjoying that, and there was a lot of good videos and documentation, and community was very supportive. So I decided to create my first project. After a couple of months, I thought it was the best thing I've ever done. It was basically a simple turret that was shooting the enemies. And I discovered that Unity enables you to sell your products on the marketplace. So I thought, great, I can publish it. My price was $5, and I was waiting for the reviewers to come back to me. I was super excited. I thought, $5, I make millions of sales, I can retire straight away. Well, what actually happened is that 2 weeks later, I received an email saying, your project was not good enough. So that was a great cold shower for me, but I didn't stop, and I continued going, and after a year, I created a solar system environment, which you might have seen before in the presentation. And it is still one of the top sellers in one of the categories on the Unity Market Store, which is great for me, and it's enough incentive for me to create a new items, new models, new projects, but not from only financial incentive. The second incentive that is sometimes even more rewarding than financial incentive is that I received a lot of emails from universities around the world asking me if they can use this project for educational purposes. And emails from other video game developers, and they were asking me, can they use this asset in their commercial games, and they were sharing the results with me, which, as I said, is a great, rewarding experience. And what if you played racing video games in the past, and you thought you wasted so much time playing these stupid racing games, and you never become a professional race driver? Do you think that you can become a professional race driver by playing video games? Probably most of you will say no. Well, actually, in 2008, Gran Turismo, Nissan, and Sony Entertainment Computer worked together in order to create something called GT Academy. GT Academy involves 25,000 players to compete in a Gran Turismo 5 Prologue video game, and the best of them were selected with the best time lap, and they went to Silverstone, an actual track in UK, and they were competing together against each other for 5 days. And the best 2 of them became professional race drivers. One of them was Lucas Ordonez from Spain, and he went next year to Dubai, and he competed in a Nissan team in a Dubai 24-hour Le Mans, one of the most prestigious racing sport. And his team became second. So basically he beat almost every professional driver out there. And after a couple of years, Gran Turismo 6 was released, and over 6 million people were competing to follow Lucas Ordonez's dream. Lucky enough, I was 255th in UK, but it wasn't good enough to go to Silverstone, so I'm not a professional race driver. I have to stick to making video games. So, those are some screenshots from the latest Gran Turismo installment, which initially was released in 1997, so it's got almost over 20 years anniversary. And I would like you to guess, give you 5 seconds to guess which of those images are real and which are from the Gran Turismo.
Top left is real?
Okay? Have a solution in your head. So 3, 2 of them real, 2 of them Gran Turismo. Okay. And honestly, how many of you were correct? Okay. 2 people, right? So that just shows us that the technology just went beyond our imagination. And for instance, the car nowadays is, by the way, it's called e-tron. It's Audi. That was released 2 weeks ago, actually. It's 850 brake horsepower car, and is currently being tested. And when I mentioned about polygon counts, that the object is made out of polygons, when Gran Turismo 1 was released in 1997, it contains 170 polygons, only 170. Nowadays, this is probably around 500,000. Some of the other items, some of the other objects, 3D objects, we call them static meshes, which means that you can't interact with them. They might even have 1 million polygons now. So they look really, really cool and really real. And after I continue my journey with discovering the Unity and going further, I was browsing a NASA website one day, and I discovered that NASA was releasing a lot of 3D models that they used for the space exploration mission, such as Mars rovers, for instance. And I decided to download them and start playing with them. And unfortunately, they have a really high poly count, which means they have a lot of polygons, which over a couple of millions, and it was difficult for them back then to convert into a video game engine because the graphic card couldn't just handle it. So I decided to model them again, lower the polygons, make them realistic enough, but computer friendly enough, and unwrap them, animate them, and release them on the store. And few months later, I received a Skype call from a person who wanted me to create one of the Mars Curiosity rover that would be used for NASA Mars exploration mission to Mars in 2020. And I found out that NASA actually released this model. But this person wanted me to make sure it's going to be HoloLens compatible. And HoloLens, for some of you who don't know, is basically a Google kit which combines a virtual reality and augmented reality. Means that when you wear those goggles, you can interact with the object that you've created before. You can tap on it, you can rotate it, you can grab it, and you can walk to a different room, having your current environment in front of you, along with the 3D model. So the interesting part was that I was super excited about it, and I said, sure, I will do it. What's the catch? Well, the catch was that we only have 10 days to do it. So in those 10 days, I have to remodel the whole Mars Curiosity rover, make sure it's going to work with HoloLens, which I never used before, and it will look quite nice. And I told the person that, well, I will do it, but I'm going on holidays for 7 days. And with 10 days limit, it's going to be quite difficult to enjoy your holidays. So I took my laptop, and my holidays turned into working on a Mars rover mission. And for 12 hours I was working on it, came back from holidays, and 2 days later it was released. Later it was presented to National Space Society. I have a video here that will show you the HoloLens.
When it comes to studying jet engines, the classroom of the future could be anywhere. At its Worldwide Partners Conference in Toronto, Microsoft showed off a new HoloLens application built by Japan Airlines. The system allows engineers to learn about jet engines without having to take a real engine out of service. The 3D model appears as a virtual image in real space in the HoloLens goggles, and different parts can be highlighted.
I don't need to be tied to my workspace. HoloLens has no cables, which means that I can learn anywhere and at any scale, and I can choose a size and a position that suits my environment. Let me show you. But not only that, I can access parts that would otherwise be very hard to spot. Show fuel pump.
Fuel pump. This is one of the essential components, which is designed to supply the fuel to the system.
The presentation, in front of thousands of Microsoft's development partners, is part of the company's push to make HoloLens a part of everyday computing in many companies.
We have the ability to solve for what has been a dream of computer science, which is presence. In other words, you can be everywhere from anywhere.
HoloLens isn't a virtual reality headset. It overlays computer images on the real world. That's something that's completely new, and that's why Microsoft needs to keep demonstrating how it can be used, so developers might get some inspiration for their own apps.
We're very, very excited about HoloLens and the opportunity it represents.
HoloLens is already on sale for developers in the US and Canada. It costs $3,000.
As you can see from this video, it's got potentially the massive, and it's currently in use by the way, but it's got potentially a massive benefits for industries. You can save a lot of millions by just sending HoloLens kits to engineers, and they can work from home basically learning how the engine works without having to take them to on expensive sites and show them expensive engines or even reassembling the engine. So just quickly summarize, I would really like to encourage everyone to work towards video games. If you never thought about it, maybe now is the time. We're living in an amazing digital era where you can grab the information and you can find everything about anything nowadays pretty much. There's a lot of great libraries that you can use straight away to create your perfect imagination game. And for me personally, the best game that I ever played was the game that I was working on, and it's always a different video game. It's always a different project, and like with the journey, the destination is not always the best part, but the best part is the journey. Thank you.